Okay, so I've got 3ds Max open here because I want to get some 3D models that I'm going to download. We're going to bring those into Revit before long, so I've just switched over to Revit there to show you that I've got that open as well. But again, I'm going to start with 3ds Max because it is a more general 3D program and it will open lots of models that Revit can't. So you'll find there's a huge resource of free 3D models that you can download. But again, they're not usually going to be in a format that Revit can open directly. Some will be, but not all of them. 3ds Max, again, can open almost anything. So I've just searched in Google for free 3D models, and you can see there all of the things that have come up. Turbo Squid, the first option there, is pretty good. It has a lot of paid models. In other words, you have to pay money for them. But it does have a pretty good range of free models as well. So you can see these are all free 3D models. And if you know what you're doing, you can get those to work in almost any 3D program, including Revit. But again, you might have to go via 3D Max. Going back here, I'll just quickly go to some of the other sites. Archive 3D is another good one to know. That actually was set up originally by people who use AutoCAD, I think. I'll just show you that one. Archive 3D. So it's just Archive 3D, all one word, with the number 3.net. And that's a great resource, actually. Even though it's not very well organised, it's got a lot in each of these categories. So you can see you've got furnishings, and then the chairs category there. When you click there, you'll get all of these thumbnails, and I'm fairly sure that down the bottom, all of those numbers are different pages of chair models. Just to give you an idea how many free chairs you've got here that are easily downloadable.
Is that for Revit?
No, so these are just 3D. Yeah. So again, that's why it's important to know a 3D program, not just Revit. Revit's BIM, so it does more than just 3D, and not all models are going to be set up for that.
So this one we only use for like 3D program?
Yeah, well, you can start with the 3D model, but then if you have 3ds Max, or even you can use AutoCAD sometimes, then you can get it into a format that you can then bring into Revit. So that's what I'm showing you here. And so I'll just maybe get a couple of models while I'm at it. You're working on vehicles, so I'll see what they've got here. Aircraft and space, or ships and vessels. They're both going to be different vehicles. So there aren't as many, but still quite a few. And let's go for a boat then. So if I click there and then go to download, then we'll find what the format is. It tells us here that it's GSM and 3DS, so they're quite common 3D formats. And but I know that they won't come into Revit. So I'll again click download, and then just click OK. There we go. In Chrome it works a little bit better, but there are other issues with Chrome. So here we go. I can just save that model now, and I'll save it. Save it here. Okay, so that's downloaded now. I'll just open the folder, and then you can see that it's come in as a zip file. So that's something you'll need to be familiar with as well. You've probably all seen this if you've ever downloaded very much. You'll often come across these compressed files, usually zip. Over here you can see the archive is ZIP. You'll find RAR is another one. That's another type of compressed file. Normally you can just right click on those and go to extract all, and then just click extract, and it will create a folder, and you can see then the files that have been downloaded. So again, we've got that 3DS file, the GSM file, which I'm probably not going to use. That's just another version of it in a different format. And then we've got a map. So that is for the material. And we've only got Photoshop to open that, so I'll just do that. Maybe the material, it might be the finished render of that boat in perspective. We don't know. Let's see. Okay, so that's actually what's called an unwrapped material. So you can see there probably, you can recognise parts of the boat there. So that's probably the base of the floor, and then these would be the hull, I'd say, the sides. And then this would be the prow, the front, and the stern maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing. And then again that would be the hull or part of the hull. So all of those parts together will make up the material. And that can be done with a program like 3ds Max. Again, Revit will struggle with things like this, but you can break it apart if you have the skills. So again, these are things you need to be aware of with 3D models. I might just download another one just to give you another example, and I'll open these in Max in a moment. So there's a lot of trial and error when you're looking for resources like this. I'll go to aircraft and space and we'll maybe get something different. I want to do a helicopter, so here we are. Which one looks better? I think that one could be interesting. Yep. Okay, so I'll download that. And again, another one, GSM and 3DS. Okay, so that one's a little bit bigger. It'll take a moment. So while that's happening, I'll go into 3ds Max now, and I'll import the first one. So it's fairly simple on the main menu. You can go to Import, and then either choose Import again, or you can just click where it says Import on the main menu. It does the same thing. There we go, that's finished now, so I'll come back to that. So again here, I'll click Import on the menu, and now I'm going to browse to where I've saved that file. And so here, spatial modelling, 3D models, and there is the 3ds file. So notice it doesn't see the GSM file. Max can't import that format, but it can import 3ds. And you can see here all of the other formats that it can import. So it's a big range of 3D formats, probably one of the biggest. So again here, I'll just choose that 3ds option, or you can leave it on all formats. So I'll double click there, and then it'll give you some options. Normally you can just leave it on merge objects with current scene and leave convert units ticked. Click OK, and there's the model. So it's come in fairly well, but the materials aren't showing at the moment. So I'm going to check that. With the material editor up on the main toolbar, I'm going to use the eyedropper and pick the boat, and that has found the material. So first thing I'm going to try there is show shaded material in viewport. So clicking on that button, and no change. So I'm going to click on the M there next to the diffuse slot. It's got this letter M, which tells me there's a map there. And there you can see is the file. And remember I showed you that file before, so I'm going to click on this file name and find that file. There it is. Okay, so now you can see it's mapped perfectly. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. Alright, so that's really all I need to do in 3ds Max with the basic setup of the model, but I'm just going to check something else. You can see there, I've just clicked on the button in the bottom right corner to bring back all the views, and so now we can see it in the top, front, left, as well as the perspective view. And so I'm just going to make sure that the boat's selected, and I'm going to right click and go to properties, so object properties. And then it's going to tell me the dimensions in millimetres. So it's 7.7 metres in the X direction and 27 metres in the Y direction. So Y is this way, X is this way. And I think that's actually pretty good. That's pretty close to the size it should be. To do a measurement. Oh yes, of course you can scale it, yep, absolutely. So I'll show you that in a moment. But I'm just going to measure in another way. So if you go to the Tools menu, you've got Measure Distance. And so there, I'm going to double click in the top view and then click once to give the second point. And that's how you use Measure. So you can see there again now the distance on the status bar at the bottom is 27 metres. And again, I think that's about right, but maybe I'll zoom in and find, see if I can find a door. So it looks like a door in there, or is it? Let's bring that around. Well, we've got these portholes, essentially, these windows. So maybe I'll find those in the left view and do a measure on those. So again, under Tools, Measure Distance, double click to do the first point, and then just one click to do the second point. So you can see there the height, 968, that's actually pretty good. But let's just say we wanted that to be smaller. If you select the object again, and then you've got the Scale button in that group where you've got Move, Rotate and Scale up on the main toolbar there. So with Scale, I might just switch to the perspective view, and I'll maximise that view with that, again, that button in the bottom right corner. And then you can either click and drag, and it's good here to look at the gizmo in the middle. So when you click and drag there, if you go from the very centre, it'll scale evenly in all directions. And I'll undo that. You can also scale with a pair of axes. So here I'll do, I'll go in between Y and Z, and then I can scale left and right, up and down, but not backwards and forwards. So that can give you some interesting results as well. So you can get variations on your model that way. So I go the other way. So this way, this is going to stretch it up and down, left and right, but not forwards and backwards. You can get lots of variation. And then the one at the bottom, X and Y, is going to make it wider and deeper, but not higher or lower. So that's working with a pair of axes. Or you can do a single axis. So I can do just X, left and right. So I can make it more like a tugboat, I suppose. Front and back. So it's going to make it stretched out or squashed. Or I can make it higher or lower just using Z. So even if you can't find a perfect model of what you need, you can often, just by scaling it in different directions, make it closer to what you need. And then the other option with scaling is if you right-click on the button there. So when you right-click on that scale button, you get the transform type-ins. So say you want it to be exactly 50% bigger. You can make this 150, enter, and you know it's exactly that size. Okay, so I've got the model though that I want, and now I want to make that into a format that I can use with Revit. So firstly, I'm going to save that just with Save As. And I'm going to browse to the folder where I've been saving. What was call this? It's not tugboat, but call it that. And then on the main menu again, I'm going to go to Export. And then I'll just choose Export again, or again Export on the menu. And then at the bottom, change the format to AutoCAD, DWG. And then just click Save. Oh, so I have to give a name. So again, tugboat will do. So here you can normally just leave the default options. So I'm just going to click OK there. And now back into Revit, I'll make a new file with the architectural template. And then under Insert, just go to Import CAD. So then I'll find that file. So just saved. Here it is. Sorry, I must have saved it. I'll just check where I saved it. Okay, so I'll just go to export again. Sorry, I left it. Okay, so you've just got to watch out for that. It goes to the default folder automatically. I'll show you how to change that default folder later, but for now, I'll just browse. There we go. There we go, so there's my AutoCAD file. And so here, because I'm importing a 3D model, it's best to leave this option turned off. So if you're turning that on, when you import drawing files, that's actually good practice. You should have that turned on for 2D drawings, generally, but leave it turned off for 3D models. That's the general rule of thumb. And the import units, again, normally that can be left on auto detect, but if you know the units, in this case I know it should be millimetres, so I'm going to choose that option. And then I'm just going to click open. And here we go. It's telling me some ACES objects could not be imported. Use AutoCAD to convert them and re-import. So that's definitely going to help, but you can see it's actually brought in most of what I want anyway. It's just that it's the wrong size. So I'll undo that, and I'll go back to import CAD again, and this time I'll turn this import option to auto detect and see if that works better. It's a problem with the units. And then open again, I'll get the same warning, but there we go. So you can see it's actually come in the right size now. So you sometimes have to do a bit of trial and error with the units as well. So you can see there, it's got my model working pretty well, but the materials are another story. So to get the materials to work in Revit is a bit more difficult, but you probably won't need to do that for the things you're doing in Revit. If you want to use materials that are working in Max, the best option is to bring what you've done in Revit back into 3ds Max and then do your rendering there. But again, I can use this now as a resource in Revit. So you probably don't want to have this whole, if it is a boat you're using, you probably don't want the whole thing to show in your finished design. You're just using it as a reference to trace around or to model around. You might show small parts of it, or I know, looking at shadows or other elements from the model, but again, you're not going to see the model itself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so parts of it, but you probably don't want to see the whole thing. So if you don't get the materials to come across, that's probably not an issue. But it could be still handy to have those material image files, and you might find that that's another good resource. So there's no reason you couldn't use a part of that whole material, for example, on something else. Maybe. Could be interesting as well. So you can definitely look at that with Revit materials. Otherwise, though, I'll just duplicate the view, and of course then we can have that object hidden in the original plan view, and of course still showing in another view. And then you can look at modelling around that using a lot of different techniques, but I thought it's a good chance to look at maybe using massing as a starting point. So I'll do another video on that, but for now, as long as you can get a model into 3ds Max, into Revit from a format that maybe only works in 3ds Max to begin with. And I'll maybe just do one more quick example of that. So I've got another file here. So yeah, so I've got some other 3D models, and you can see there it's come up with this message telling me that the maps are missing, and that's again all to do with the materials. So I'm just going to hit continue, and we'll worry about the materials later. So you can see there that model of the Space Shuttle has come in pretty well. But if I go and show you the other views, you can see then that the orientation isn't very good. So that's another issue where a little bit of work in 3ds Max is going to help you a lot. So I know that it's not a very good orientation because when I try to orbit in the perspective view, that's quite difficult. And now looking in the other views, you can see why. It's because the whole thing is rotated the wrong way. It's upside down and it's on the side. So I'm going to just select all of it. So we've looked at scale. You've then got rotate next to that. And here, I'm going to turn on angle snap. And then I'll right click just so that you can see the settings. And there you can see that the angle setting is 5 degrees. So I'll close that. And in the left viewport, I'm going to right click just to make sure it's active. It already was because it had the yellow border, but just to make sure that you know that. And then using the grey circle on the outside is often the best way to start with rotate if you're not sure. And so I'm going to click and drag on that grey circle and rotate it 90 degrees. If you're wondering where I'm reading that, it's down on the status bar at the bottom. You can see it says -90 down here next to X. So now you can see it's much better, but in the front and the left viewport, you can see it's actually below this black line, and that black line is essentially your ground plane. So now I'll switch over to move, and then I'm simply going to, I'll right click and make the front viewport active, and then I'm going to click and drag on the Y axis and just move that up a little bit. Okay, so the things you've already done with 3ds Max should help you to make adjustments to models that obviously have already been made by other people, but still going to need some adjusting after you've downloaded them usually. So that's ready to go now, and again on the main menu I'll go to, well, firstly save as, and save it as a Max file so that I can always come back to make further adjustments in 3ds Max if I need to. And then again on the main menu I'll go back to export and again use AutoCAD DWG, and I'll call it Spatial. And again just using the default options there. And so just to test that that's working, I'll bring it into the same file in Revit. So again, using Insert, Import CAD, there's Space Shuttle, and again just using the default options. I'm going to click Open. Okay, it's just taking a minute because it's a bigger file, but there we go, that's come in. Now it's gone over the top of the model. So to move that, firstly I've got to unpin it. You can see there's a pin that's come up. It's easy just to unpin clicking on that pin icon, and then I can drag it to one side, and if I need to I can of course rotate it like anything else. Okay, so you should be able to get most 3D models into Revit with a bit of trial and error. The other thing though, if you want to have different materials on these, you'll need to do one extra thing. So have any of you looked at using or setting materials for models that have been imported like this? So you might have seen it already. When you go to place families, I'll just go and get one. You'll see a lot of them, even in the normal Revit library, actually come from AutoCAD. And this can give you a better idea, hopefully, of the software, how AutoCAD really works, as opposed to Revit. So I've just brought in a chair that's in the library. So Have you thought about maybe trying to make a model like that in Revit? So you might have seen there are lots of chairs like this in the library. Any 3D model, yeah. Not just any image, but yeah, any 3D model, yeah, that's right. But the problem is, you couldn't make this in Revit. It's just not possible. So how do you think that was made? If it wasn't made in Revit, which program do you think?
Is it AutoCAD?
It's AutoCAD. That's right, it is pure AutoCAD. So a lot of people don't realise AutoCAD is a great 3D modelling program. It's much more powerful than Revit is as a 3D modelling program. Problem is it's also harder to use, and that's why we don't teach it anymore as a 3D modelling program. It used to take about 2 years of constant tuition before people could do anything very much. Yeah, but it's because it can do everything. And that's why it's still used in product design, because you can do really detailed, highly accurate 3D models with AutoCAD. You just need to know a lot, in lots of physics or understanding geometry to be able to do that. So we don't expect you to use AutoCAD for 3D modelling anymore, even though if you're interested, I think it's a really worthwhile skill. But what it's really useful for is getting things like the ones I've just been showing you and using it in the same way I've been using 3ds Max. So it's a good thing to practice, importing models. And all of these things have been done by other people. You don't need to make any of these vehicles yourselves because other people have done the work for you. But you need to at least know how to adjust those things and get them into a workable format. So I'm going to go now and open one of those files in AutoCAD. So here you can see there's the space shuttle and there's the tugboat. I'll get the tugboat. And so you can see then it's come in as a mesh, and it's all on one layer. So if I select it, you can see it's all coming up as one thing. And that actually can make it a bit hard to work with. The space shuttle, if I open that one, isn't so bad. So you can see it's actually got a couple of colours. When I select it, it's not selecting the whole thing. So you can see there, the top there, the part that opens is separate, and so is the other side. So that means they can be put onto different layers. And that's really important because if you ever need to change materials in Revit, you need to have the layers set up. So to make the layers, use AutoCAD. Right, so you just then, using AutoCAD, I'll just make a layer. And I'll change the colour. Right, so I'm going to select those two door objects and put them onto my doors layer. And I'll change the colour to by layer so I can see that they've got the colour from the layer. And then I'm just going to save that file. Now back into Revit, I'll import that model again. So I'll delete the one that I imported before, and I'll go back and insert the space shuttle one more time. Okay, it's a slightly bigger file, so it'll just take a minute. Okay, so now, let's move that over to one side. So now if I go to Manage and then Object Styles, if you go to Imported Objects, that's where you'll see the layers. Because this is actually really important. It's kind of fundamental to using Revit beyond the basics, knowing how to set materials for things that haven't been made in Revit. And this is how you do it. So here you can see this is the space shuttle file, and it's got the layers. So there's my doors layer. So I can change that to have a different material. So that's how you do it. So that's why you hear a lot of people say, if you can't use AutoCAD, you're never going to get beyond being a very basic Revit user. And it's because of that. Essentially anything that's complicated, you'll find it's usually been made in AutoCAD. and then imported into Revit, and Revit's just being used as a management tool, which is really what it's been designed for. Revit's a BIM program, Building Information Modelling, which means it's for managing collections of objects. It's not meant as a detailed 3D modelling program. Now, it's a common misunderstanding. People think you can do all this 3D. That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, that's right. If they've been made in AutoCAD, you sometimes have to go back to AutoCAD to fix it. Yeah. And get, at least to get the layers to work. The other option is also using parameters in Revit, which works brilliantly. But you often need to set up those yourself. So you'll find when you download things from, say, Revit City, that the materials aren't set up because the person who's made it has put the materials they want, and that's all they need. But when you download them, you'll need to often change the materials, so then you have to go and put your own parameters in. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. But it's not a bad thing, because you've got to think, well, if it's easy and anyone can do it, why are they going to pay you to do it? If anyone can just choose widgets and things using a wizard from a library, like people can do when they're doing interior design, a lot of people do it themselves. I've had clients who've downloaded their own CAD programs and SketchUp and just drop things into it from SketchUp Warehouse, and they think they're doing interior design. But they can't change the more complicated things, and they can't generate things at a basic level because they don't know how to model. So you still need to learn those more complicated things. And I know it can seem a bit technical at first, but that's again why you get paid pretty well. Interior designers do get paid fairly well, but you have to have the skills to back it up. And so maybe I'll just give you a quick example of one of those things, because there are plenty like that. So I'll just get another model. This is sort of, not exactly related to what you need to do for this assignment, but it's still going to help you. So just to finish off on this, I'll get some 3D models that I know were made by someone who probably hasn't set up the materials, or in fact, I know that there'll be some Revit City things here. Where's the Revit City folder? There is one here somewhere. Downloaded, or can anyone see Revit City there? I know there are lots of Revit City models in this folder. Here we go, this one I'm going to take a chance and hope that it is one of those. Yeah, okay, so looking at this family here, you can see, yeah, it's good, perfect. Okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about, and what you were suggesting maybe happens when you download things even from Revit City that are in the right format. You then can't change the materials. So here, how do we change the material? What would you be trying? Select it, maybe. Have a look at edit type. That'd be the first step. That's what I'll be doing. Yeah. Yeah, there. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, no, you can always set it up. So yeah, it just means that not all the setup's done. Like you're saying. So here, if I look in edit type, there's no material option there. Now, if I look in properties, that's the other place that people don't look. There, you'll sometimes see it'll have the material property there, but it doesn't have that either. So then the next thing will be to go to edit family, and that'll take you to the file, and we can look further into why it's not working. So this actually has been made with Revit, so they're extrusions, and you can see that the material has been set. If I select it, it's been set directly. So in other words, it's been assigned in the family. Oh, that doesn't mean... Yeah, that's only locking the dimensions, so it won't affect the materials at all. Yeah. So there, it's got timber finish, and you'd think, well, I can browse there and then change the material here, and that'll change it. But then you might have found if you go to reload that back into Revit, into your project, that it won't even change. So I'll just prove that to you if you don't know what I mean. I'll change the colour here to purple or pink. Okay, so you'd think that will work. That will change it. If I click OK, it's changed in this file. So what if I go load into project, override existing version? No change. Why is that? The reason is, if you look at materials here, the timber finish material was already loaded. So that original version with this orange colour was already in my project. So making a change in the family file won't have any effect because there are two definitions of that material. So how do you change it then? And again, you have to use parameters. So here I'm going to select all of the objects that have that material. It's a bit tedious, but you have to do this. So using control, I'm selecting all of those solids. Okay, so I've selected all of it except the shelving. I'll do the shelving next. And so you've got the material option, and then next to that you've got the add parameter button, or the parameters button, that grey button. If you're wondering what that does, that's to assign your own parameters. So I'm going to click there, and then click on the new parameter button, and we'll call this cabinet material. That's it. You don't even need to do anything with the materials in the family. There's no point. So you just assign a parameter. Yeah, no, you just got to assign a parameter. That's it. It's that easy. Assign a parameter. You can do this to any family in Revit. So most of the things you'll download on Revit City won't have a parameter set up. But again, all you have to do is assign your own. And like I've been saying, Revit's a management tool. It's always got the options to manage things however you like, but you have to set that up. So now, again, I'll just click Load into Project. I'm not even going to bother saving it. And then again, override existing version. Now, if I select that family and go to Edit Type, what do you know? There's the new parameter. And I can simply change this to any material that I want. It's that easy. So I'll choose a different material. I'll choose the chipboard one. That's actually a better timber anyway. There we are. Done. Okay, so it's just about managing your materials. And again, it does relate a bit to what we were looking at before, because for families, you can assign your own parameters. For imported objects, again, it's probably easiest at first to use layers, which is, again, under Manage, and then Object Styles. If you haven't used that Object Styles option, that's actually a really important tool in Revit. It's probably one of the most important panels in Revit. And then, so here you've got all of the model objects that you've been working on so far, walls, doors and floors. That's how they're all controlled, if you've been wondering. And then again, under imported objects, you've got all of the AutoCAD layers. If you're wondering how to assign parameters to these, you have to do one extra step, which is to set up the imports in a family. So you import the AutoCAD file into a separate family file, then bring that family into your project. And that's if you want to use parameters. Yeah, that's something to try later maybe, once you've got this far. So, yep, so really all of that was just to show you how to get some resources. There's no point reinventing the wheel. If you can find things that other people have done that you can use, of course, that's a great thing. So maybe, just to finish off, let's have a look at that helicopter. So back into 3ds Max. If you want to just reset, main menu, you can go to Reset, and that takes it back to a blank file. And so, third time lucky, I'll go and try importing that helicopter. That's actually coming pretty well. And so, yeah, this is a nice model because you can see here it's not all one thing. So all of these different parts are separate. You can see by clicking on them. The feet there, the body, and the helicopter blades are all separate. So the final thing I'll show you there, if you're having trouble getting the layers to work in AutoCAD, or you're having trouble selecting objects in AutoCAD, you can make layers in 3ds Max. So you might remember from those tutorials, if you right click on the main, next to the main toolbar, you can then choose layers. That brings up the layers panel, and they work just like AutoCAD layers, except they're even easier. So if I choose, say, the blades there, then I'll click this new layer button, and there's a bit of a bug actually. You've got to go into here, Layer Explorer, and then close it. and yeah, then click on it again. That's it, and that makes this option come up where you get that tick box to move selection to the current layer, and that's really handy. Okay, so if you make layers in 3ds Max, when you export the file back to AutoCAD, those layers come in just like AutoCAD layers, and that can help a lot as well. So that should hopefully open up a lot of options for you, because it's not just things like the vehicles that you'll need for this assignment. The other 3D models that you'll find can be used for lots of different things. You can see here this huge selection of 3 models on TurboSquid, and you know, it's a great thing to have in your projects, all of these decorative things, especially for your design projects. So just try that, search for some free models, particularly vehicles for your design, but again, other things that you might need. You can always download those, and you'll always be able to find a program that can open them and then convert back to a format that Revit can use. So maybe one last thing, I can't help myself. When you go to export, you'll see AutoCAD is a great format, but if that doesn't work, this option, where is it, sorry, that I can't see, ACES SAT down the bottom, which is the SAT format, in other words SAT, that's another one you can try. But again, usually AutoCAD DWG is going to work pretty well. Alright, so I'll finish there. I'll do another video in a moment on NURBS. So not on NURBS, on massing. So NURBS is related, but no, yeah. Well, NURBS is actually a type of modelling that that does tie in with massing, but we'll do massing first.